In your opinion, what is a quote unquote good developer?
I've got, I think, about six pointers I want to quickly touch on. So one is perseverance. So even when it gets hard, having the perseverance to push through those times and know that it will get easier. The willingness to admit when you're wrong. This is a really big one. I always preach that this is a huge skill because you can't always be right. Like statistically, it's just not going to happen. Don't tell my husband because I tell him that I'm right all of the time. But if you make a mistake, own up to it. Like it's okay. Like it's not going to be the end of the world, but it shows that you are self-aware. And you can grow. Good communication. We take communication skills for granted. So whether that's in writing, whether that's, face to face, just, work on your communication skills to foster those better team relationships. Willingness to learn. If the moment you stop learning, the moment you plateau is like, it's almost, that's the only thing that could possibly kill your career for the most part is when you stop learning. This sounds so cynical and I don't mean it this way, but it's, like you can't succeed if you stop learning. So keep learning, whether that's learning vertically within the area that you're currently in, whether that's learning laterally across many different things, just find something you like and learn about it. On top of that, willingness to teach, because we all have something really useful. We all have different ways of explaining things. You have to be able to teach your colleagues and whatnot. And then the last is open-mindedness. I have seen quite a few people in the industry who are very closed-minded or who have very strong opinions on things, and opinions are okay, right? Generally, we form them for a reason. But you need to be open to exploring new technologies, new opportunities, and seeing, okay, like maybe the way I'm doing it isn't the best way to do it. So those are the skills or the bullet points I'd say that make a good developer.
Yeah, that sounds like a good list, a good solid list there. I really dig the whole admitting fault thing, because it makes you accountable. It makes you aware of your mistakes. And if you admit to a mistake, you probably won't be making that again very soon, because if I mean, it could be any kind of mistake, but let's just pick on like a technical mistake. You've made a mistake and it's been pushed to production, and there's been a whole hoo-ha over that. If you can say that it was me, then you will have that experience and you'll be able to take that with you to other companies, other jobs, other projects, and you won't be making that again because of the experience that you've had. But also, just in terms of like being able to know where to look for these mistakes as well. So like even if that's going through log files and knowing where things sort of fall apart, I think that's really really super important. So what in terms of non-technical skills, though, do you think that there are more non-technical skills required for programmers wanting to become better programmers, or do you think that it is purely mostly down to technical skill?
I think it's subjective to a certain extent. I think it depends on the individual and the kind of work that they're doing, and also just their personal goals. So for me, I like to focus on my leadership skills and my business skills. Okay. I read a ton about leadership and business, and it's just something that I like. Like I had a business minor in school. I went to leadership camps growing up. It's just something I enjoy, but that's not for everyone, right?
Right.
There are many different types of personalities in the world, and some people are like worker bees. They just like to keep their head down. They like to focus and get the task done. For me, I have trouble concentrating. I'm not going to lie, but I do like to lead. I like to plan things out. And so what I would say are my important skills that aren't technical might not fit with someone else. So I do think it depends on the individual. And, if you're someone who likes to be creative and who likes to, lead a team or want to start a project, I would say look into like leadership and business training. But when you get down to it, people skills are going to be very important as well. Again, not for everyone, but to a certain extent, yeah, it is kind of everyone, because you work on a team for the most part. Unless you're like a solo freelance developer, you're working No, I take it back. Everyone works with people. You got to have people skills. Even as a freelancer, you're going to have clients, right? You have to learn how to empathize with people, how to listen to people. So often we just shut people down. No idea is a bad idea. So we should, embrace that and listen to what people really have to say. So people skills, it's like we take that for granted, but it's a big part of development or really any job. So
definitely. I take that point. I mean, so I'm a freelancer. I work for myself, and I usually go into clients where they've got legacy code. And there's sort of like a skeleton crew of devs. And for the most part, the stuff that I'm dealing with has been developed by other developers who don't exist in that company anymore. So you have a whole spaghetti of history and backstory. Plus you've got the product owners, the people who are actually going to pay you, and they have some have tight budgets, right? So you have to be aware of not only the technical needs, the technical history, but also the product requirements and the business needs. And once you understand those sort of pockets of information, then you can sort of, hopefully try and push the system forward, but be sort of empathetic on all avenues. And it's really, really difficult sometimes, because you're working with people who have either worked on this thing for years and years, so you don't really want to approach on their territory. And sometimes they are like, this is my baby, I'm not going to let it go. And then you've got the conversations where you can talk to business owners who aren't necessarily coders at all. And they are giving you the backstory of how the history of the company happened. So you kind of get that sort of, that whole history, and you try and merge the two things together. And when it works well, then it works really well. There's a lot of compromise. And I think that personally is a very important thing to bring to the table is compromise. Because there is like, everyone says good practice, do good practice. Do all the things that you should be doing. And yes, that is the case. And I really do support good practice. I certainly support testing and all of that other technical jazz. But when you're speaking to a business owner who is telling you how difficult it is to get funds together, you've got to put things in perspective. I guess I from accident have been able to merge the two worlds together. And it's been very interesting because you hear the different sides of the story, different sides of the table. So certain person skills are certainly something that I have personally been developing.
And I think we really need to be conscientious of who we're speaking to.
Exactly.
So let's say I need to prove the value of a design system, for example. And this conversation will be vastly different depending upon whether I'm talking to a designer or if I'm talking to product management, right? So we've got to say, okay, product management is probably more interested in the fiscal return or the, how long it's going to take, right? So figure out who you're talking to and what do they want to hear, right? Like what would make them the happiest and pull those pieces out of the benefits of what you're trying to do. The second is people like to be heard. And they like to feel like they matter. Luna agrees with me. So here's an example. We're building a design system, and there was a Bitbucket repository that a team had been working on for, I don't know, a year maybe. Can you hear that? Like,
yeah, it's fine.
Oh, this is embarrassing. Okay. So let me restart this. Okay. So there was a team working on a Bitbucket repository for what they called the design system, right? They called it Chameleon Design System. And now that we have established a true team to work on this design system, we've started building it from scratch, from, a baseline. And as such, we wanted to name it Chameleon Design System, but given that repository space namespace had been taken, we couldn't do it. And so I had to send them an email and I had to say, hey, we really appreciate all the work that you've been doing. We need you to change your name. And here are exactly the reasons why. Engineers, we like steps, we like bullet points, we like finite data. So I said, here are the reasons why. I said, I know that this is frustrating. And the work that you've done is not getting thrown out. We would love your help developing this moving forward. So I think the biggest thing here, and they both replied very positively, right? This could have been like a hairy situation had I come in and been like, you got to change your name. It's not going to happen. We're the authority. But because I came in and I said, we appreciate the work that you've done. It's not getting thrown out. I want your help. Of course, they're willing to help. So I think any situation, you can take it and you can identify the feelings and validate the feelings that these people are having, right? They're not always positive, and we can first validate them and then figure out what you can do to help with them. So
yeah, I totally see your point. Yeah, it's the fact that you are aware of their needs and what they've achieved so far, and you're not the one who's coming in and changing everything, pulling the carpet from underneath their feet. You're actually there to help enforce what they have started to build, right? So it's more about you becoming part of the team, not you being the whole team. I totally get that. Just a quick story from my point of view. There was a client that I've dealt with, and they had the business owners had zero confidence in the dev team at the time. This was going back years and years and years ago, and this was because things were being rushed. Things were being not tested properly, and for no single fault. There was no sort of like fault of the developers or fault of the business owners. It was a joint fault. It was sort of like, they didn't give enough time. The developers didn't do enough testing. It's one of those sort of tug of war kind of scenarios. So I kind of looked at this and thought, well, how does one make this more transparent? Because the thing that was failing was communication. So, we set up things like Slack, we set up things like Jira, bug reports, that kind of thing. So they could see all the work that we were doing. And, this wasn't really in place beforehand. There was like these meetings that happened like once every blue moon. And it would be the same thing said in each thing. So, the output would be the same. It would be like, it's not ready yet. So we managed to sort of like boil that down into smaller little chunks, and the confidence level of the team is certainly not where it should be, but it is higher. And I wouldn't say that I was the sole person to sort of like push this forward. I helped the team get to that point, and it was a bit of a struggle at first, but it's certainly made everybody happy. Obviously the project managers want it like yesterday. So, that's not achievable, but at least they can see what we're actually doing.
Yeah, it's time consuming. Developers like to code, right? We don't like to spend time on documentation or anything like that. So, but I will tell you, transparency saves projects. At the end of the day, our stakeholders need to know where we're at. And not only that, when you have teams dispersed across the world, I work with people in California. It's very, very clear that we need a process in place to track where we are asynchronously. Yeah, definitely. When you're working in teams that are remote and they're all over the place, different time zones, you definitely need to have that level of transparency. You can't just hide in a room for a week and do some code. Yeah, that's the problem there is that when there's no communication, there is a greater emphasis on assuming things are being done or being done in a way that is assumed, and that's not always the case.